My name is Tarek. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel.
Now, you guys should know by now, I love me some gamer subs, or to use appropriate grammar, I love gamer subs. So, for example, I like this citrus lemonade one here. It's delicious. Now, don't worry, ordering is a breeze. So let me get to the point. Rush to apply my code Thorin, Thorin, for an automatic 10% off your order. It's just a delicious sugar-free energy drink, not cursed or hexed with obnoxious branding like other competitors and companies in esports. And just remember, a gamer subs a day keeps the gamer doc away. Asterisk, that is not medical advice, that is a joke. Now, Evil Geniuses is a legendary brand in esports. It is still respected to some degree, thanks to the Dota 2 team, thanks to the fighting games players they have, the CSGO team years and years ago in parts of 2019 and 2020 earned it some acclaim. It generally has a pretty good reputation, but not an amazing one in League of Legends, especially now. That's aged somewhat poorly. Once upon a time, a year ago maybe, it was actually easing into an interesting reputation. And let's be real, the rebuild around talent was the main selling point of the League of Legends one. That was the key thing. And spoiler, part of that talent angle has already broken down, eliminated. And that is actually a massive scandal, which, don't worry, I'm going to go ahead and put some time aside for also to do a video about. Because even though that whole it's already collapsed, the key narratives, I've heard some very alarming things, as I've been hinting on my League of Legends shows, and I will be, these are credibly sourced things, I will be looking into that side, and there'll be another video in the other game coming out. Remember though, this is not the same group of people or individuals that built the success of Evil Geniuses. The reason why it was so respected in the past and has this tenure. This isn't Alex Garfield and Sir Scoots and other figures like that, PPD. And crucially, what made me actually first start tugging on the strings of the jumper until it all amazingly unraveled, I didn't even expect it, the incompetence and the malice would go this far, was just that I made a request for an interview/talk show appearance, and it was declined, and I independently was able to verify. They had blacklisted me within the organisation, even though I'd done interviews with players in the past, I'd done interviews and requests with these people I was working with. Crucially, the players and the staff I wanted to use, they all wanted to do it. They all said yes, and then when they went to check, normally just a routine check, it came back, no, it's not the case that's going to happen. So what I thought was, you know what? You want to mess with me? You want to fuck around with me? You want to not even give me a reason? You want to just blacklist me and lock me out of doing any content with your people? Well, you know what then? Here's the thing. I've never lied in my job in esports, and I'll never publish lies. But I'll tell you what. I'll dig around. I'll see if you've got anything going on there. So I'm not normally an investigative journalist. It's more Richard's space. I've given him many of the stories that I got my way first and let him handle it. He's the master of that. But I thought, you know, this is personal. Let me pop on my press cap, get to work, pound the streets, do the classic journalistic ideal, speak truth to power, get all the sources, independently verify them all, put together a summary, and this is the thing, don't worry guys. I thought at first, it's going to be like a lot of orgs, like maybe they paid people right, or behind the scenes they seem like cool people, and it's just like drama between players, or this management, or this guy who's a bitter coach who left some... No. What was crazy about this one was everything was coming my way. The second I would even reach out to people and tell them, I'm going to do a story like this, be all confident, suddenly they were all just opening up. And even people who normally would never speak badly of an employer or a colleague or something, they were all just forthcoming, and they would, hey, you should talk to this person as well. I'd go to them. I had all the little birds coming to me. In fact, I just started doing it in CSGO, and suddenly the League of Legends stuff was coming to me, stuff from other games. It was all just pouring in. People who even were within the org currently would be coming to me and saying, oh, look, I'm still going to stay here, but I don't agree with this, and I don't like the way this is done, I don't like this person. And suddenly it was all just coming my way. And so what's crazy is I got it all. I got all the sources. I got them all. I got past and present employees and players. I got high and low within the hierarchy of the company. I got the people who dislike the org on one hand, and Nicole LaPointe, and... well, there's nobody who likes the org and Nicole LaPointe, so I guess on that one I sort of set you up there, didn't I, with the dynamic of how I was speaking. It's just called camera presence, timing, comedic timing. So when I do this, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit to make coherent themes that we go through. So in the chronology, you'll see, we'll go around a little bit here. So here's the key thing to understand. Let's just first look. What is the issue with Evil Geniuses, the CSGO team? It starts just with raw performance. Especially bearing in mind, they're able to pay people 5-figure salaries, and sometimes good 5-figure salaries, the kind of money you might make if you were in Vitality or some top-up G2, some team like that. They can pay you that. They are an appalling CSGO team under this person's tenure, Nicole LaPointe, and some of the other people within the organization. So what you're going to find is this. In the post-Zeus era of Evil Geniuses, when we went back to LANs, because he was the coach back during the online period, if people remember, basically almost the entire like solely online period, and he had his period where he had them blazing in NA and they were rocking the league and doing great. I think he's one of the all-time great coaches. He's an amazing guy. Here's the stats in the post-Zeus LAN era. So obviously I did these by hand, so they could be like 1 or 2 off. But what I'll do is this, to highlight how bad they are, I'll tell you the raw stat, and then I won't tell you like who they lost to. They lost to almost everyone you can imagine, like all sorts of terrible teams you've never even heard of, like this Illuminar team they just lost to now. But I'll just tell you the teams they beat, as if to show you that even the wins are just garbage. So in maps, they have played something like, I think it's 74 maps on LAN after Zeus left. So we're talking like July 2021 to now. They played 74 maps and they won 23 of them, which is a 31.08 win percent for maps. So we're not even talking about just losing series, but you always get, not like Cloud9, you always get a map. So no, they're just losing. They're barely ever winning maps. Like they win a map in a series or generally less than a third of the time they play, no matter what level they play at, by the way. Here are their wins of the 23 wins. Hey, listen to some of the wins they've got. They've beaten 9Z, 00 Nation, Nouns, Furia, IHC. Those were all, I think, in best of ones. Those are best of one wins over named teams that you might know. Spoiler, have you noticed anything? That's like, by the way, that was like the not that good 00 Nation. The best one there is Furia, and that was just like an RMR win from what I remember, where it didn't really matter, and Furia went to the major anyway. IHC, Nouns, 9Z, like, then you go to series. All right, maybe in series play it picks up. No, in series play, I believe they have played 24 series and they've won 6. So it's a 25% series win rate, no matter what level they play at. Now, of the 6 wins, I'll just tell you all 6 to realize how terrible Evil Geniuses is. Their wins are Vici from China. Could you even name 3 players on Vici? I don't think you could. Party Astronauts, who the joke is later got signed by the org to be one of the 3 teams, but not the main one. So they just signed this team of amateur players from NA that beat them. Eternal Fire, who, by the way, this is in Pro League, immediately made cuts because of how drastic it is to lose to EG on LAN. They beat Movistar, also, similar scenario, Pro League. They just lost Sun Pius. They didn't have the guy who carried Colognes. It's not even the good Movistar. They beat 9Z in a series. By the way, 9Z is the team that, like, can barely beat anyone outside of the Americas. They're a joke. And they beat Heroic just now, didn't they? Except they beat Heroic right after a player break in which one of their players was still doing his like time off because he'd had this issue where he couldn't attend the last event of the year for whatever personal reasons. They'd obviously been on a high at the end of the year, major final, Wind Blast fall, did badly with config at World Finals, then the player break. First match back, they managed to upset them. Great. Spoiler, they lost them later in the group. They lost all the matches after that. Then they went online. They were losing to everyone there. They were even losing to teams like Illuminar. Like, is that even like a top 3 Polish team? I don't know. I barely knew some of these players. And it is actually atrocious how bad this squad is. They're really, really bad at Counter-Strike. And this has been going on quite a while now. Remember what I said there? That's from July 2021 to now, beginning of February 2023. 6 Series 1, and they're against Vici, Party Astronauts, Eternal Fire, Movistar, 9Z, and Heroic. And by the way, this team, because of how bad the RMR is in NA, went to some majors in that time period. They went to PGL Stockholm. They were able to go to majors and still couldn't do anything. This is atrocious. So let's get into it, shall we? So this all starts, if you remember, this is the first inkling we had something was going on with the Malek saga. So that was a guy who joined in like late 2021, and then he got kicked around like what spring? It was like May or something. And then bizarrely, there was this middle period where they were interviewing people and potentially going to get someone else, and they were bragging about how they were going to make this power, all this stuff. And then they eventually just brought him back after they like removed Stewie, who was part of the beef and the problem he had. We'll get into all that later, don't you worry. And here's the key thing. Ever since Zeus's time, they had been crap. They had just been terrible, like I've just explained. And part of the reason why is because even when Malik came along, it was just bad decision-making after bad decision-making after bad decision-making, after stupid people being assigned, after someone who doesn't know making the decision or overruling you or promising you A, then giving you not A and telling you to deal with not A, but still act like you can publicly then claim that that person's to blame for not doing A. Like, it was ridiculous. The whole situation was mental. So Malik joined officially on the 24th of December, right before Christmas, or if you're in the Nordic region, Christmas Day. And I heard behind the scenes, remember, I verified all the things I'm going to say, but we'll say I heard, because crucially, this is about protecting sources. And I got them all, don't worry. I heard it was just a shitty domino effect. One falls after another, and he tried, and all the people who are on this coaching staff tried their hardest to make this work. They really did, in good faith, join this org and believe in this project. And you saw it. Malik initially even made some public statements and did some things and sort of implied like he didn't like it, but eventually went back there. Now, people might know, and crucially, Richard's done his videos. I'll link them in the description. There was the Evie one, who was the analyst, who was with Malik. He did a report on an interview, on I think it was 1VP FR, the site that Nell writes for. All this stuff is legit, by the way. All that information I was able to corroborate. I heard the same things, and I saw loads of it across the board. Players, coaches, staff, all across, everyone agreed with this, basically. So the general story on that one, and I'll go into more details, mainly you'll heard some of it in the Evie one, but I can corroborate, is a massive problem here was the relationship between Malik and Stewie, which people might know didn't even work from the beginning. He couldn't even get the coffee. He was sort of giving him an attitude. Essentially, it was disrespect from Stewie out the gate, who was being a diva the whole time, tried to turn the team against Malik in terms of the culture socially, and got Malik cocked, wrecked, and fired, basically. Even though eventually they sort of saw the light, instead moved Stewie out the team, made him a streamer, and then maybe let him transition around, which hasn't worked out, and then brought Malik back and, oh, my bad, mate, culpa, oh, okay. But that's not the way they ever planned any of the stuff. And I heard this. I heard it was all due to a lack of compromise from the org side. They just catered to Stewie. They treated Stewie like he was the golden ticket. He was the one that was going to lead them to the promised land. And they didn't let Malik run his system. What they'd promised, I've heard, him and his coaching staff, they would have the keys. They would decide the roster. They would run it. They would run the practices. They would have the whole keys. Remember, he just came from G2, a massive org. He was just in the major final months before he joined this team. This is ridiculous stuff. And then I heard also, are you ready? That when they kicked Malik, Evie, an analyst guy, they did it via email. They just sent him an email and then right afterwards just announced on Twitter. So it was one of those where it's like, you know, when you're working with them, when you're interviewing, when you do all this sit-down meetings and important things, and then they just send out an email for some of these guys, some of them, and you find out via email, you're essentially like, service is not required, you're fired, and then a tweet just goes out. And even worse, if you saw the way the tweet was phrased, it was implied like, because they're getting fired, they were part of the performance issues, but they never had the keys to the car, yet they're getting blamed for how it's being driven, and when. This is ridiculous. So the problem is, like I said, if you want the juicy details about some of that, just go look at Richard's thing, go look at the Evie report. Every player, you ready? This is the things I've been able to get. Every player except Stewie 2K wanted Malik to stay in this org. Some of them, most I heard, fought for him, told the org as much. They thought Malik did nothing wrong, that he was doing everything right. They disagreed with Stewie, no matter what they told him personally. I have no doubt they said to, I thought, oh, Max just going to turn to like Stewie. Mate, Rush, these guys have played with him for years. Like, there's obviously a fraught aspect of doing business with your friends there. I'm sure they told him some things that made it sound not as bad. But behind the scenes, they all disagreed. They all thought he was wrong, and they thought it was wrong what was done to Malik. That's why, by the way, they were happy when Malik came back, and they all stayed, but only Stewie wasn't there. As Richard pointed out, just looks like it was you, doesn't it, Stewie? So, quite frankly, they didn't agree with Stewie, no matter what they said to him. They understood that Malik was supposed to have the keys to the team. They agreed with that, and they wanted him to have that. But they knew that while Stewie 2K is there, they had to adjust to Stewie. They had to compromise to what Stewie wants, and he wasn't going to compromise to them, is what I heard. And the org backed Stewie to the hilt until Malik was fired. So here's the crazy thing. Take it back a step. Why was Stewie 2K even there to fuck up this whole Malik situation and never let it properly get off the ground? Because I heard that Malik and some of the others told EG when they heard, oh, we're going to get Stewie 2K. They said, no, You can go and check this in the 1VP. He's blacklisted by some orgs. He's not a good in-game leader. Like, there's a reason other people don't want him and he's available. But the problem is, because the people making the decisions don't know CSGO, and some of them are boneheads who don't even come from esports and are just going off like Reddit narratives and silly things. They were for real thinking this is like the NFL, and if you're good like in 2016, you're probably good now in 2023. They don't understand how esports is now. You can fall off in 6 months, a year. You can just tank your whole career. So they were saying, and this was the quote in that thing, we want him. He's a superstar. Stewie 2K in 2022. He's a superstar. He won a major, by the way, even though he got that clutch round. He was actually one of the worst performers in that major. You can go look it up. He's the best player in the US. They said this 2022. End of 2021. Stewie 2K is the best player in the US. They're years behind on their narrative. Even in Liquid, he was one of the worst players. These people know nothing about this space, as you will find out. So then I heard, they were doing a boot camp in Katowice, preparing for Blast during this Malik period. Now, here's what's mad. Compared, it said, to the G2, I'm going off some of the heavy stuff just to give you the background for people who don't know. Compared to the G2 players, people like Stewie and Automatic had an unreasonable vision of the coach, is what was said. Like, supposedly there's a quote where Automatic was like, let us do our shit. We won a major. We know how to do it. Spoiler, you didn't. EG claimed Malik's going to have full control, including on the roster. So you can imagine the shock in this environment, because these guys said, and I've heard this corroborated, when they would go, the practice and the environment was like they were playing for fun, like they were fucking around. They weren't properly doing it seriously. Supposedly, Stewie sometimes wouldn't even be coming. He's the IGL. He would be raging in scrims, and he would just be saying, I'm just playing for fun, or I'm just playing for, who gives a fuck? It's just a practice, bro. I wouldn't play at this in real, all that jazz. And he's the leader. He's the one you've pinned your whole hopes to. You're even crippling your new coaching staff to compromise to this guy because you think he's a superstar. You think he's going to win you a major. You think he's the best player in the US. You are clowns. I hope you got your makeup on properly, guys. This gets worse and worse and worse. Supposedly, Stewie wouldn't even talk to Malik. And by the way, when he was getting addressed by Malik, would just have his back facing him to utterly disrespect him. By the way, if you actually even know, like, ethnically the culture Stewie's from, that's incredibly disrespectful. Like, I imagine if you were to go and inquire with, like, his family, like, what would it mean if someone did that? Man alive, I don't think they would stand for that, mate. I've heard very different things in that scenario about all those ethnicities. So I think, from what I've heard, Stewie was very disrespectful. Then there was all this gaslighting from the org, this idea of, like, I don't see how this is a big deal. I don't see how this is a problem. And at one point in time, the other guy says, because Malik had to be absent, during Pro League, he was the coach. Nicole LaPointe, the CEO of EG, who knows nothing about CSGO, by the way, was there, just with him. And then Stewie, in the game, was just stopping calling. And she was just watching. Because she knows nothing, she didn't even do anything. She was like, oh, whatever. Oh, yeah, that's just how it goes, isn't it? And they said, this is madness. Why would you stay if you hadn't been fired, by the way? I'd leave at this point in time. This is outrageous. I heard there were constant rush decisions at the end when they were fired, and that something mad happened, like the top people, maybe Malik and the rest, spoiler, Malik and the rest, had like some sort of meeting like with the CEO and the COO, and then a couple of hours later, it was like communicate, like, yeah, you're fired. Like, it's out, like, it's going to be out already. This is what's mad. If you want to know what a G Malik is, I've heard he is so legit. He even on his way out, because he cared about the players and the project, tried to recommend people to be his replacement, to replace him in the job they're stealing from him that they never gave him a proper chance for. And then they did the PR statement. Should we have a look at this, shall we, when they fired him? Evil Geniuses is committed to the success of this team and will continue to make the necessary moves to help our players challenge the world's best CSGO. So whoever they're firing now, this is necessary to allow their players to challenge the best teams in the world, whoever they're firing. It's no secret that performances have not been met expectations since the start of the year, 5 months, and this bullshit we're talking about. Because of that, we've made the tough decision to move CSGO head coach Damien Malik Marcel to a non-active role, aka fired, and have granted him permission to begin exploring new options for his career, aka fired, aka the end of your career. Just go out there and pretend I'm not firing you. I'm just moving you to another role. But you can just go and join anyone else you want at that point in time. Spoiler, fired. And we have also parted ways with assistant coach Paulo Evi Berbudo and analyst Juan Hepa Borges, who I've actually heard was the analyst for Team Liquid before that, and thank them for their hard work during their time with Evil Geniuses. So the implication there is those are the three people who are behind the underperformance, not the players. They didn't fire Stewie yet, or Cirque, or Breeze, guys who were on mega bucks, by the way. No. Fire all the coaches. They're to blame, right? We're excited, and I've heard, by the way, in League of Legends, same sort of pressure on coaches, but don't worry, there'll be another video coming. We're excited to start fresh by finding a new coaching staff that is aligned with Evil Genius's goals and system. The system's just Stewie 2K as a diva, and is the right fit to bring out the best form from this roster. Here's the problem, guys. Since they brought Malik back, they've just implied here he isn't aligned with their goals and their system, and that he is not capable, if you go further back up, of the performance level they expected, and allowing their players, allowing that group of 5 players, one of the worst lineups of big paid players ever in a tier 1 org, it was them limiting them from being able to challenge the world's best team. It was their fault. It was all on them, guys. I won't stand for this when I know it's nonsense. It's absolutely a disgrace. That is so insulting. And then the guy's so cool. I mean, I'd say he's a little bit of a wimp. I'll just say it right now, man. Like, I like him, but you're a little bit of a wimp on this one. No, I get it, you need a job, but why you go back after that? After they do you like that, mate? Really? I mean, G2 didn't really even respect you either at the end, like the way they just cut you after the major fight. Like, I don't know, mate. I'm troubled on all ends of that one. And then I also heard, by the way, from a whole bunch of these people in this circle, in this group at this time, I heard essentially when I asked about the CEO, because I'm thinking maybe they're just not attached, maybe they're just doing business up here and it's just like someone who's the GM or whatever, maybe it's Valens or something, maybe he's the one fucking everything. No. I heard this from someone. They said Nicole LaPointe doesn't know a thing about esports and CSGO, and that they thought everything was League of Legends and how LCS does it. And by the way, that's a common theme we'll return to later. You'll see. Now, don't worry, that wasn't it. Because what did happen was, remember, he was fired in May. On June 2nd, Andrew Barton, the general manager, who I think also comes from like League of Legends or some other nonsense game, definitely not a CSGO guy I've ever heard of, he did a tweet announcing that they were going to make, it was a video, that they were going to have like a power roster. By the way, that's the roster that then eventually became like Neelan, Hexed, power roster. Who? Most people didn't even know who those players were if you just followed tier 1. You never heard of them. And by the way, Neelan's been around the edges just from tier 2 and tier 3 forever, right? And at the bottom of the shitty majors that no one cared about. And then he said that they need to fix CSGO. So what happened? Malik got brought back. I'm back. He comes back in. Stewie goes out. But in the meantime, though, they messed around Kassad, who wanted this job, who thought with the resources they've got, I can implement a system. Obviously, I'll do some shrewd buys to get the right players in. I can level this up. I can keep 1 or 2 of the players. We can do something with this. This is a real gig. This is a gig I'm interested in. Just give me the control and the keys. And so what happened was they messed Kassad around for months and months and months. Implied he could get like... if he joined, like it was going to happen, he was looking really close, it was going great, like any moment, it's just the last couple of things have to be checked out. And then when you do, by the way, you can even get like a big player, you can do like a lot in the CSGO division, you can spend some money, but we'll get to that. Because along the way, I've heard there was someone else involved with this, before I get to the Nicole LaPointe person later, which is, I've heard there's this guy, I know him, I used to work with him at SK Gaming, he's called Danny Engels, and he used to be one of the world's best racing drivers. I'm not actually even sure what the game was at this point in time. It'll be Need for Speed, I think, was the one if I had to remember. And he used to be a champion when he was in SK Gaming, and that's the only way I knew him. He was part of the team. I'd see the odd photo with him. We'd do like the news post when he'd send me it. I heard he is the guy who they eventually gave the control that was going to be Kassad's to figure all these things out because he's within the org and he has a different position. And that I heard that he is the one who thought this academy approach was the angle. To bring in 2 extra teams and have them all play at the same time. And somehow that would level up the main team in some way. Has it worked? Has it? Fuck. Now here's what's mad. Instead of fixing the coaching structure, instead of getting a really good general manager like a Kassad, instead of buying top talents that could make Evil Geniuses a legit world contender again, no. What we're going to do is get 2 academy squads and we're going to go for this fantasy, silly future that'll never come about for them or for their org, where these players all develop into really good players. We move them up to the main team and the main team becomes one of the best in the world. Because, in theory, that's what they did with Danny in League of Legends. He's not even there anymore. He burned out in like a year and a half or something mental. And then they have another guy who's like a rookie, the Jojo Young guy who's kind of like a prodigy, right? They thought, that worked in League of Legends, so it doesn't work in CSGO. It didn't. Spoiler, it didn't. You just paid a bunch of salaries for 10 extra people and coaches or whatever, and it did nothing to help your main team. And your main team is still ass, and maybe you cut some salaries, that's about it. So here's the problem with what this Danny guy did, is I've got to explain to you how I heard from some very credible sources he got the gig. And when you know this, you're going to know that EG higher-ups have no fucking clue. Hence, when they make an informed decision, they have no fucking clue. So they hire the wrong person, who then hires the wrong person, who then makes the wrong decision, and then a legit competent person at the bottom, like a player or a coach, has to deal with an idiot like that, who's telling them, League of Legends, really, and then they're overruling you, and in your game, you're never getting the good players. They're almost you by getting crap players, and then you get fired for underperformance. And I've heard in League it was the same thing. You got given fuck all, you were handicapped the whole way, and then you were basically told, if you don't succeed, you're fired. Goodbye. And so it was mental. I can't believe. So I'll tell you the story I've heard about the Danny Engels guy, which is, because I know him from SK Gaming. I heard what happened was he went to G2 and he was working at G2. And at G2, he was one of the people, this is the way Carlos used to run the company. He was one of the people Carlos sort of mentored. He was like, I had a personal relationship with him. He's working with him. He's bringing him up through the company. And look, it might sound mean, but you know what? Evil Genius is a dickhead, so I'm going to say it. I've heard basically Carlos, like, because Carlos had a lot of control over people, he was I remember, he used to act like the GM of the League of Legends squad, but he always would have a GM who had that job. So obviously he's someone who delegates to some degree, but because it's his org and it's all about his ethos and his like vision and his vibe, he also would himself sort of do some of these things. I'll tell you, do it this way, okay? But then obviously you can take credit as the GM or whatever. So I've heard basically he just mentored this guy up and gave him like titles and stuff like that. And in doing so, actually this guy himself started to believe the hype, and even worse, other orgs did. And this guy basically sort of like left to go to EG, got headhunted, even though essentially, if you'd never done your due diligence, asked around, it's not a guy who knows about CSGO and these other games. They headhunted him like fools, gave him mad responsibility, put him in a position to make all these decisions, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He's acting like it's League of Legends. And here's all I heard. I heard this quote. They go, he doesn't know what he's doing, so he should fit right in there. Amazing. I love it. So then let's get to the Kassad saga. I've heard he interviewed with 5 different departments. This is a nightmare of what corporate culture in America is like. You don't interview with your boss or your boss and the person above them that makes the decision. You have to go and interview with all these people in the org. Some of them have nothing to do with you and what you're going to do in your job. They don't even know your game, your background, or what you would do. And it's just like a stupid interview. And if they vibe with you or whatever, and then you don't just do an interview, you keep interviewing. I think we'll have you come back again and talk again with another guy in the room. What does he think? And what would your vision be? And how do you see evil geniuses in the future? What do you think of us? Do you think we get a team that can do? And they do all this stuff like that. And basically, I've heard he was told, like, Valens is in charge now, and they're not going to have anything to do with CSGO. So crucially, if him and some of the others sign off, you'll just be in. He's the top person overall. And good news, you're top of the list. A bunch of times, you're top of the list of the people we want. But then suddenly, they just ghost him. They just ghost him for months. They wouldn't contact him. It wasn't him just spamming him over. Nope. They would contact him to reinitiate. Oh, yeah, don't worry, you're still on the list. Like, yeah, things are getting better. The wheels are in motion behind the scene. And then ghosted again. So you think, wow, fuck it then, I'm not going to bother. Oh, another person, don't worry, they're coming. I heard that when they were doing this, even though, remember, top of the list, all the rest of it, and never got the gig in the end, and was even mocked by them, as I'll get to later. I've heard that in these meetings even, the things they would be like promising was like, oh, you'll have like a big budget, we're willing to buy players, don't worry, we're willing to spend. Spoiler, who did they end up with? Neelan from Kazakhstan and Hext, a nobody from NA. Now, in these meetings, it would include, and sometimes one of the main people, would be people who know absolutely fuck all about CSGO or esports. I mean, I'll show you a tweet right now from one of the people that he apparently interviewed with, which was this person called GamerDoc. Oh, don't worry. Basically, I heard about this person. They're going to get their own video eventually. They've done too much stuff. All I'll tell you is this before I get into the specifics. I've heard they just started as like some physio, kissed the right ass and said the right things for like a few months. And suddenly we're like almost like an exec or like a VP type level. And suddenly they're the senior director of performance for the whole org and bragging about it like they know what the fuck they're talking about. So this is one of the people that Kassad interviewed with. Are you ready? This is mental. Someone, by the way, who on 12th of October, months and months ago, guys, said this tweet. Pretend like you're talking to someone who has never played or downloaded CS in their life. How does one obtain an evil genius's skin? Purely hypothetical, of course. The joke there is it's not a joke. They're admitting they know nothing about how CSGO runs. So this is what happened. Kassad dared to critique them. He said, can't wait for mandatory BS, this is in November, from evil geniuses, the one that got knocked out the major, I'm assuming, how this isn't the result they hoped for, but they are super proud of the team's progress and looking forward to great things in 2023. Wow, what an outrageous statement for an analyst to say. He didn't even say you're all morons, you're all shit like I would, and I will, don't worry. So this GamerDoc rushes in there, Director of performance. When this team is fucking terrible, like I said before, by definition, your job is the performance. You're the one who's fucking up as well. And you're going to Darvo, make yourself the victim and attack Kassad. Spoiler, he didn't give him the job, so it can't be his fault, you moron. So then this individual says, wow, seems like your overwhelming enthusiasm about our program has waned in only a few months. But I suppose people say anything in interviews. One, it is insane that you would essentially imply I'm leaking how you behaved in our interview, a totally private scenario and an utterly unprofessional move by a figure within an org, not just a random staff, a key figure who's responsible for player performance and how they were. Oh, so if you leave EG, they'll just badmouth you publicly. They'll just leak things that were private conversations. And also, think how stupid. The joke here is it's a counter signal. You tell it on yourself. Because when you go, your overwhelming enthusiasm about our program has waned in only a few months. I can't imagine why, when he thought he could join the org and be in total control and get all the players, he would have enthusiasm that the project could be good. But when he got fucked around, didn't join after many, many lies and disingenuous conversations and meetings with imbeciles like this person here, after that, he then saw them sign shitter players that nobody cares about, accomplish fuck all, waste major spots, waste partner spots, get paid massive money to do so, and then after all that, suddenly he's not so enthusiastic. Oh, Scooby, this mystery's too hard for me. Poirot, the little grey cells, I must activate them if I am going to solve this mystery. Are you fucking kidding me? The joke is, shitters like you doing a terrible job with the org, fucking it all up, not doing your job as a director of performance, is the reason why you're the director of underperformance, you idiot, is the reason why he has no enthusiasm in only a few months. It only took you a few months to kill the whole project, you cretin. I suppose people say fucking anything on Twitter. I suppose some people just be saying stuff, don't they? Just be saying stuff for the sake of it, whether it's true, whether it's disingenuous or not, Exactly. Oh, by the way, as I said, spoiler, this person probably shouldn't even be in their fucking job. How absurdly unprofessional. Ever was there an apology? Was there? Fuck. Were they disciplined? I've heard not, because they kept going and are doing it to this day. To this day. It's mental. But here's the thing. That's just up until now. Let's rewind. Because, what about the past? I mean, they did have that period in 2020 where they had all that success with Zeus. They were dominating. And obviously, you go back before that, they had Chet, I'm a Pet, and the guys from NRG, and the ones who obviously now are over in Valorant. Like Chet, by the way, is one of the best coaches in the world in Valorant, and a bunch of them have gone over there. They had all those players because they had, after that major where they finished in the top 4, lost to Astralis, Starlight Emerging, 2019. They had that little run. They obviously won New York. They won Star Series. They finished, top 4? No, actually, they bombed Malmo. They had they had a few more good results, and then basically it petered out. And after a few months of that with the Stars, so that quickly fell apart, right? Then it was whack for the beginning part of 2020. But then Zeus got the team together around that player break. They went on that run, beating everyone. Okay, so at least in that time period, it must have all been good, right? It's only now that things have gone to shit. Maybe it's when Gamerdoc and people get the positions. Surely before they weren't doing any shady shit. Oh, no. I've got all the stories. Don't you even worry about it. So here are some. And again, I'm going to be careful how I say this so that we can't get anyone wrecked. So I heard they used to let the players just organise the whole team, and that if past coaches came to org figures and were like, I don't like this is over the professional here or this player's, they would just overrule them and be like, the players are doing it, they know better, like just let them do it, basically. I've heard they would toy with people that they knew they were going to kick and already knew they would replace, and in doing so, keep giving them false hope that they can stay longer and that they're not quite fired yet and there's a chance yet, even though they actually found out later behind the scenes, they've corroborated this, they were always going to be fired, so that those people just wasted months and months, or wasted events, or wasted weeks and chances they had to secure employment elsewhere, and then when you get kicked, you're just left with nothing. The rug just pulled out from under you one day. Weird how you treat a family like that, because they're always in this org, with like American corporate culture, talk about being a family. Well, this is a fucking abusive family then. We should send child protective services around for this fucking family one, but maybe that's for the League of Legends video, eh? So I've heard they just wasted people's time disrespectfully. I've heard they would promise people the world so that people would turn down other gigs, other offers, even players about to join were given the cassette. Oh, you get all this and all the rest, and you get all this salary. So they were turning down offers to join other teams, even teams maybe you wanted to join more in terms of the players, but this is just such a great career opportunity. How can I say no, bro? I've got to do this one. And I've heard, though, despite playing this angle and giving it so much hype beforehand, when they would come to the negotiation, they were the most ruthless. They would try and crush it till you get no. I don't know how they signed all those players like Breeze, not for massive, because everyone else, they were wrecking you, they were crushing you. Suddenly they had no money. Suddenly they demanded extra things from you, or we need to pay you, we give you less than you're asking, and we need to get more than you're willing to give. And so I've heard it was ridiculous. I've heard it was absolutely pathetic. It was one way of acting one day, and then one way when it was time to sign contracts and time to actually put numbers on paper. Now I have heard, I'll say this, at the time, he's not there anymore, the guy called Philip Aram, we actually had him on Four Horsemen if you don't know, I've heard he was actually legit. And I've heard actually, due to some of this fuckery, he was battling with the org, and apparently he even like won and got some like big payout. You can go look it up somewhere. Like it's ridiculous. Like that was one of the only legit people, and so he went to war with the org and got paid off by them and fucked off because it was just a shit show. I've heard the past coaches who had success were having to work in difficult or limited situations. They were working under a guy called Greg Kim and Andrew Barton. As I know, I think both of them are League of Legends guys. The guys who don't know CSGO, they don't understand it. And the worst thing is, under those people, this coaching staff, Zeus, etc., was able to get the Evil Geniuses to #1 ranking in the world. Now, true, that was from beating up all the NA teams, but at the time we thought Team Liquid was good, we thought Fury was good, Gen G was good, and they were dominating these teams. We were beating them every time out the gate. And crucially, during this time, because they were doing well, there were actually some of the players, by the way, didn't fuck with EG the whole time. And they were just like, you know what, actually, we want to go. And I've heard some of them were just going to go and join Team Liquid. I heard that was going to happen. That was actually going to be a thing. They'd make like their own little super team over there. And in doing so, people like Zeus and the others, obviously, you have to try and keep your star players, right? Or your gig's done. Like, you're not going to get a player to replace the best names. And so he would have to go to bat being told, I've got all this stuff, and try and get these players like, look, we'll give you this, and we'll give you this, and don't worry, the org say we can get this. And basically wreck the credibility of the coaching staff. Because then when negotiation time comes, they don't have that, and they won't offer you that, and they never were going to offer you that. And why are you saying that? Look, you could have gone, but it's too late now. And as a result, some of them turned down this Team Liquid Super Team deal, and then it was just done. And it was off the table, and then they were back to a shit show thing in EG. And you can imagine how that would remove your will to play. No one, you're trapped in this situation, and your org sort of finessed you and fucked you to not go to a better situation. Even though, by the way, I've heard the buyouts that they could have gotten for these players would have been the buyouts that you could have used to take in a different direction and invest in other good players and build a different direction. But they did neither and ended up in a nightmare no man's land in between. And so what I've heard is that even small stuff couldn't be managed. You couldn't even give the managers a good fucking wage. The buyouts, when they would ask for them, would be ridiculous. But then they also weren't willing to pay big buyouts to other people. So it was a nightmare scenario to be someone who you think's got full control. I've heard people like Zeus, but they weren't even on the big salaries. I've heard he was on like a little boy fucking tester salary. Then you have people like Tarek. Well, Tarek always had the power to stream, didn't he? So he just fucked off. That's the team done. Naf, I've heard, by the way, could have joined like other teams, could have joined EG rather, and wanted to, but EG just didn't want to spend the buyout. So they could have had Naf, by the way, to shore up that team that really needed a stable rifler and a clutch player. Didn't do that, of course, wouldn't pay the buyout for him. Ethan obviously got demotivated, pieced out to Valorant. He wasn't even a top player there, but he's a good player, I'll say. They had to go for free pickups. Nobodies like Obo, who had all these issues people knew about behind the scenes, but they had to gamble on him. That obviously didn't work out long term. Mihu, who had already had multiple chances at tier 1, had never made it. It's just an all right player. And then I've heard basically there was this civil war between the Andrew guy and the Greg Kim guy or whatever. And the Greg guy, I think, even got fired over this maybe, and the Andrew guy got paid out. Like, I've heard all this stuff was going on. It was behind the scenes. It was a nightmare even during the success. I've heard even, you have a player like Zeus. Zeus knows the Brazilian talent. He could get those guys in. But again, EG didn't want to pay for these guys. They didn't want to pay them reasonable wages. If they come from there, they better get fuck all. And so they didn't join. They went to other teams, and some of them have simply become good players. Then you had Breeze on the side, I've heard was playing Valorant because he lost his motivation, a la Ethan, just waiting for his time to depart. Didn't, of course, milked a bunch more salary for years on, which they allowed him to do. Remember, they have the director of performance. Why aren't these guys in there working with them, figuring it out? So you're not really motivated to see it. No, they never figured it out. And then what happened to my boy Zeus in the end? He just got fired, didn't he? Didn't they just boot him out after all that? But was it his fault? You were way worse without him, homie. Just go look it up. Even some of the online results when they were terrible, they'd get the odd win. They'd get the odd 7th to 8th, the odd 5th to 6th. They were doing nothing after he left. He was working miracles in that scenario. And let's not even go into some of the stuff I heard in 2020, some of the stuff about when the team would be in Serbia. All I'll say is it was a recurring theme from people throughout the CSGO division, past and present. They think everything is League of Legends. And if you know League of Legends, it couldn't be further from how CSGO operates. So then let's get in to Nicole LaPointe, shall we? Now, the key thing here is this. She is the CEO and effectively the head and absolutely puts herself as the face of the org above the players. Now, when she joined, I'm going to read it in a minute. There's a great article to read. There's a Washington Post puff piece that was done in July of 2020 when she'd only been in the team like a year, where they just make her sound like Jesus come down from like business to come and save esports. She even said herself, but I had to come in and help save this org. Now, here's the thing. I actually thought initially, you know what? You give everyone a chance. You give everyone a chance to prove themselves. Give them a chance to make a mistake or two. And what you do is, it's not about mistakes. Everyone can make a mistake. Anyone can fail. It's about how you handle them, what your attitude is, and then whether you take responsibility, whether you cop to it, whether you're honest, right? So here's the thing. She did a tweet to me. And I thought, you know what? I'll give this person a little bit more time even. Because what happened was, I can't remember. Oh, this is at the beginning of 2022. Since she'd done a tweet on January 11th, so this is around the time of Malek, he's just joined, she put, in all seriousness, we are here to save NACS. Imagine how badly that's fucking aged now. They're here to save NACS. Mate, complexity's outperformed you fucking idiots. Get hyped to learn about the team and why they've joined starting next week. Give Evil Geniuses a follow to get all the content. So I just said, kind of bantering them, the way your org managed your CSGO team in 2021 is a significant reason NACS needs saving. Because obviously, just like Liquid, Evil Geniuses was once one of the best teams in the world, once the best team in the world on ranking, and had the powerhouse players and resources to always be there. So why was this team, at this time, remember, Team Liquid was half decent at least. EG was terrible. The joke is they were the one letting down the side, weren't they? So, okay, fair play. She comes in and she has a very good response in context, which is she just responds and go, yep, we took the L, earnings, as in learnings, and rebuilt with smart and tenured management, coaching, and awesome players. She's talking about the coaches they fired and blamed. She's talking about the ones she didn't give the keys to. She's talking about the player that overruled everything and fucked everything up like a diva. She just sat back watching it. She's talking about people they thought were going to win the match. This is exactly all aged so fucking poorly. So I even said at the time, fair enough, it's good you can acknowledge where you have failed previously because it was on her watch that it all went to shit, right? That's nonsense, that whole response. And you've seen it borne out by her actions. This roster and the last one proved it was nonsense and none of the things she said, and she didn't know what she was talking about. Then they went into an even stupider roster that also proved it. The main roster, this chance to save the team later with the power roster, involved signing Neelan as your in-game leader and Hext as a talent. They're neither. In the context of what Evil Geniuses can do, what the actual fuck? In a sane world, they'd be the ones that broke the bank to sign Device, to sign Alexi B, to sign JKS, people that were available. If not, then at least sign like a really good NA pro and 2 sick Europeans. Maybe you can't get a big name like that. Maybe you get Dexter as your AWPer. Wouldn't that be sick? Maybe you can get Son Pius, pretty good AWPer, right? Maybe you get Spinks, up-and-coming rifle talent, was considered top 5 in the world. Maybe you get your Kindar. He's already at Liquid. Everyone loves him. You had plenty of chances before that to go and try and sign a player like that. He already was in a scenario he didn't earn that much in Virtus Pro, I've heard. But hey, you might have heard there was a player linked with them, I've said before, who was going to join. Remember, it was Valde. Now, here's the thing, guys. I've heard the way that they messed around with this deal might have even cost Valde a spot in Astralis. Oh, if you're an Astralis fan, whoo, that could have been old Zippy Boy on the bench. That would be the dream, right? Device and Valde join. Remember that rumour? Last year on the major in spring, the PGL Antwerp major. This is one of the reasons why. The problem is, in the end, I've heard they decided, after trying to like go as harsh as possible with all the situations, they just decided, like, because of the roster rules, we want to play in the NARMR, spoiler, play on easy mode. In other words, we're willing to not be a top team in the world to play on easy mode in the RMR, just get to the major and get the stickers and get some money, which shows what a loser mentality they have. And so they needed to have 3 NA players, so they chose Neelan over Valde, because they would have needed like another IGL as well if they'd have signed Valde. There's a kneeling over Valde. Look, Valde might not be great now and then, but he could have done a lot in EG, put that way. And I've heard that while he was like testing out, he would have to scrim with them from EU on high ping, and then they were judging him based on this. Like, these guys are clowns. They're absolute clowns. And if you don't know, at least in League, you could sort of get away with high ping. In CSGO, it's about reaction time. It's about precision. You'd be dead. You can't possibly compete like that. So the optics is what kills me about this team. The joke is, Nicole LaPointe joined the wrong org. She should have joined Optic Gaming. It's just a shame, by the way. They don't love bringing in CSGO experts to make decisions in it. They just ignore them. They just listen. Don't listen about Stewie 2K. Don't listen about the structure. Re-up with the same bullshit players. Sign them again. Don't do big signings. Say you can do big signings. Big signings come, you won't pay the buyout. Big signings come, I want a decent salary. Young signings, up-and-coming talents come, at least want a decent salary. Don't give them it. And then you just pay Breeze and Circle more money. These guys are utterly incompetent. And I've heard this person, Nicole LaPointe, from all across the org, people past, present, they say she wants to be on camera all the time and promote herself. It's about self-aggrandization. She's taking credit for everything. She's the reason it's all happening. And then you're all just part of what she's accomplishing. I've heard they paid ridiculous money to even get the org in the first place because they didn't do their due diligence about where the industry was at. I've heard they sold a player like Ethan for big money to 100 Thieves, didn't reinvest the money into the CSGO team. I've heard she would be involved with meetings where she would ramble on about nothing and then meaningful change wouldn't happen and they'd blame money for the reason why it hadn't happened. But then they'd be promising everyone, free agents, coaches, the world, and especially money and money for buyouts and signings and your salary and what you'd be able to do with the resources. These are dishonest and disingenuous people. They think they know best and put mediocre minds in place to make key decisions. Danny Engels, it's not racing, mate. It's not League of Legends. Andrew Barton, Greg King, it ain't League of Legends. Dr. Lindsay Miglior, Gamerdoc, Nicole LaPointe herself. These are all, as far as I can tell, for the CSGO side, incredibly inappropriate people to be in these positions who have failed over and over and over again. And it is their philosophy, it is their decisions that have led Evil Geniuses to where it is. But do you know what? When in League of Legends or in CSGO, when talented people would succeed under enormous pressure, without the keys to the team, without the resources they're promised and they're bragging about publicly that as an org they can provide, the execs and these decision makers would jump in, take all the credit, get the credit in the org, get their promotions, get their spots. The Gamerdoc person went from physio to a top position, and they would all, crucially, another thing from League they did is lie about how they wanted to develop talent, how good they are at developing talent. As far as I know, it was people like Empire and Peter Dunn who developed talent. They destroyed the talent. And what's more, in CSGO, they have been fucking appalling at developing talent. And they can't even get their current big players to play well. Now, the funny thing is, one of the big selling points of EG, if I'd have made this video 6 months ago, would be Peter Dunn, right, on the League of Legends side. He's a big selling point. He's a massive person for structure and for coaching and for the right thing. He's gone now, by the way. He's not even at the org anymore. And do you know what I've heard in League of Legends? Spoiler, I'll do a video on that. I've heard there was some mad unethical and immoral behaviour with how they dealt with and pressured that Danny kid. Their young rookie star, they heavily promoted and bragged about having developed. It's way worse than you've heard about, but don't worry, I'm on the case, like I did with this one. Very few people had anything positive to say about EG, and nobody had anything positive to say about Nicole LaPointe. So now let's read a Washington Post article for a bit of light-hearted comedy, and then we'll get into some other points and we'll wrap the video. This is going to be amazing, guys. So here's the article. It's a mad puff piece in the Washington Post, July 15th, 2020, by Teddy Aminabar, and it's titled, Evil Geniuses' New Mastermind Must Reckon with the Past to Chart a Future Course. Now, here's some classic pieces if you read through it. It's all about, like, joining this business, because she's someone where Nicole LaPointe Jameson, the 26-year-old chief executive of Evil Geniuses, doesn't come from esports. LaPointe Jameson cut her teeth in private equity, turning around distressed businesses. And she says that's exactly what EG was when she joined the company over a year ago. I've heard they didn't even do the due diligence. They paid way more than they needed to. They could have gotten a bargain price. She put, I don't run around talking about, hey, EG was on fire. You just basically did, by the way. You just said you had to save them and you were going to come in and save NACSGO. LaPointe Jameson told the Post in June, abbreviating the company name. But I had to come in and help save this org. Which one is it then? They're not on fire, but you had to come in and help save them, and only you from outside esports could save them. It gets funnier. In the time since, LaPointe Jameson has led the company through a front office renaissance. She's staffed up, created marketing and sponsorship teams with offices in Seattle and Los Angeles. She's ushered in a new era for the 21-year-old esports brand with a redesigned logo and a new slogan, Live Evil. The first design was the one everyone hated, where it lost the stylized E and was just evil geniuses and some whack font. She was behind that and they're bragging about it. And then remember, she staffed up. She's taking credit for making the stats. They're the ones that ruined all the teams. Or if they had control, didn't get enough control, didn't get the pieces, couldn't do anything, got blamed and fired instead of the players. So okay, and now as she starts to get her footing 14 months into the job, she's facing challenges of a different kind. Her organisation is among those throughout the gaming and esports industry dealing with claims of sexual harassment, assault and racist rhetoric. Keep those last two words in mind. There's a surprise at the end of this article. Woo! At the end of my video, rather. In June, Evil Geniuses cut ties with two players accused of wrongdoing. One player left the organisation after accusation of sexual harassment, and another was let go after past comments disparaging black women gamers resurfaced online. Keep it in mind. Both instances fly in the face of the diversity and inclusion initiatives Evil Geniuses has touted over the past year as an esports organisation. Listen to this quote. "We can't have staff or players that contradict in their history," get ready after this video for what gets released, in their history, before they've even worked with EG, those types of initiatives. She's making a promise here. She's saying what EG stands for. LaPointe Jameson said in an interview before the accusations against both players surfaced online. Indeed, these past few weeks, Evil Geniuses has been forced to reckon with the past behaviour amid its own ranks in order to move forward in a more desirable direction. LaPointe Jameson's tenure atop Evil Geniuses, this is amazing, started in May of 2019. Are you ready? When a Chicago-based investment firm called Peak Six acquired Evil Geniuses, one of the oldest names in North American esports, and tapped LaPointe Jameson to take the reins of the company, making her the first African-American woman to lead a major esports organisation. You'll soon see why that is such a big selling point. The deal was billed as a fresh start for an esports brand on the verge of irrelevance. Accurate? LaPointe Jameson said Evil Geniuses was barely keeping the lights on. Remember, it wasn't on fire. She just had to say that it could barely keep the lights on. LaPointe, by the way, why are you buying it for so much money if you can barely keep the lights on? It sounds like they're the ones with the leverage against them, right? Before the acquisition, Evil Geniuses was treading water in titles like Dota, while up-and-coming competitors sped by with new ventures. Peak Six provided the capital to expand into other leagues, buy spots potentially, and LaPointe Jameson provided the professional know-how to staff the organisation around competitive teams. She's the one who has the credit for getting the staff. Ooh, interesting. For the industry at large, by the way, I'll just tell you right now, this person already seems like an idiot who is boosted to be a media darling, and exactly for this purpose, to get all the good press and to seem like everything good is them, and as a result, you can imagine what's going on, right? For the industry at large, the outside investment by Peak Six represents the continued evolution of these competitive gaming ventures from teams in tournaments to corporate media companies and brands. And LaPointe Jameson's role as chief executive signaled these organizations may start to diversify from the generally white, former players, venture capitalists, and traditional sports owners running the esports franchise today. Because what would they know, right? They couldn't get over a 25% win rate on LAN in series. They couldn't get over a 31% map win rate. Oh, wait, they all did, and they were doing an awesome job. And even the worst days of Zeus were way better than this. Interesting how that works, isn't it? So then, LaPointe Jameson's friend, this is mental. I know for people who aren't from CSGO, you're going to think, what? I'll just throw this in for comedic purposes. LaPointe Jameson's friend, it's an article, mate. It's an article. And former League of Legends host Overly May, who I generally like, good interviewer, funny person, told the Post that in a world where esports is still so freaking young, LaPointe Jameson provides a needed dose of professional weight. She's now more well equipped to deal with certain issues in the esports ecosystem that people who have been in esports for years may not understand how to fix, May said. How the fuck would you know? You're just an interviewer, her friend, and someone who does on-camera stuff. What do you know about business? What do you know about decisions behind the scenes? Spoiler, She hasn't dealt with anything. The teams are shit in the games. Then you come to the scenario where they're going to deal with the racism. At least I deal with the PR and the optics. The optics is terrible with all this stuff in CSGO for years. And when you get to the end of the article, they didn't even nail the whole racism and keeping the ethos and the principles of the org legit. But amid a new direction and a changing guard, Evil Geniuses still carries the inertia that comes with a 21-year-old esports name. That's nonsense. That's just absolute bollocks. That doesn't even make any sense. Means nothing. Idiot doesn't know anything about esports. Talking about the author of the article. The rebranding in December sparked a backlash from long-time fans who felt the changes ignored the past. LaPointe Jameson's challenge is now to chart a course forward while giving a nod to a history for which most of the staff and players were never there. Yes, they don't get to claim any of that great history. You idiots. You only get to claim what you did. Trying to regain some legacy. I don't think we'll read this whole thing. Let's see. There's a few more here, though. Let me scroll down. Let me see. Here we go. When the deal between Peak 6 and Evil Geniuses started to close in spring of 2019, it was clear management at the investment firm wanted LaPointe Jameson to run the ship. Are you ready? There wasn't a formal meeting or an interview for the job. She and her staff interview people over and over and over and over and over again. They just said, checks all these things. You don't even need an interview. You got the job. You got the job. You're in. What the hell is that? Can you start to see why this organisation is shit? It's never had any standards from the beginning. LaPointe Jameson wasn't worried about the workload, and she wasn't bothered by becoming a chief executive of a company just a few years out of college. Yeah, because she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. Sounds like she's not qualified for the job, mate. Why weren't you interviewing other people doing your due diligence? What? It's mental, innit? Oh, by the way, as an aside, we won't read the rest of this. There's plenty of other blocks. We'll come to some of it later when it's relevant. I'll just say this. At some point during this tenure, by the way, this individual publicly, it was known, was dating Travis Gafford, one of the main League of Legends journalists in North America. Well, I guess we know how they like to deal with things, eh? That's not a conflict of interest, right? Give me a break. On both ends, by the way. So all I'll tell you is this. This individual is a fraud. I'll tell you something else mental, by the way. They did a video when the partnership was announced for Valorant for VCT for this year, at the end of last year. On the 21st of September, they put out a tweet announcing that they had a Valorant spot. And in the video, she's telling that directly to the players in EG Valorant and all these people who are the staff, etc. And they're all celebrating, yay, we're in the league, yay. And she's saying, because we're awesome and we did a great job and bragging. Now, I noticed in the video, they didn't mention the name of a single player because I've heard they were shopping them. They might replace them all. Spoiler, since that video, even though now they've got a master 10-man roster with it, they've signed 5 players, including some much bigger names, like even Ethan. How could it be? However could it be? Evil Geniuses is a clown organisation. They are living off past glories they did not accomplish. Their best successes in CSGO came from already assembled rosters on the verge of becoming the best. The NRG lineup was right there, which was short-lived even then because they mismanaged it. It was revived by Zeus. They pissed that away too. Didn't even reinvest money when they sold people. In League of Legends, they hired the right guy and gave him some control. He made miracles happen. LCS title, went to both international events. He's gone now. Now they're back to whatever. The CEO seems incompetent and fame-hungry in a way that actually is essentially malicious for what it causes the effects of on other people's careers and reputations. She talks a good game, but doesn't produce it. And if you compare them to Team Liquid, Cloud9, FaZe Clan, they are a fucking joke. They are clowns. It is only compared to TSM that they actually seem vaguely good or competent, and because TSM is run by an even bigger idiot. So here's the one last detail I'm going to leave you with. I was going to do this video. I had it all squared away, except for obviously the game docs of that happened since. I was going to drop this the day EG got eliminated from the major, because I knew it was going to be super early on. If they'd have even made it though, I might have dropped it after the RMR. But you know why I didn't do it? Because I actually personally did feel a responsibility. I don't have to, by the way. I'm a journalist. I don't know this person whatsoever. But I know what it's like to be in a situation when people are hating you and people are potentially aggressively going to try and hate on you. And I didn't want this player to be in a fucked up situation. So here's the thing. Remember what I always said earlier about racism and dealing with it? And it has to, even the past has to be figured out, right? These are things. Are you ready? I've heard that one of the CSGO players, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do this. One of the CSGO players in the CSGO part of the organization has a past of saying things, we've got the evidence, boys, of saying things that would be considered racist, that would be considered anti-LGBT, that would be considered slurs, things that certainly, based on what the CEO has said in past actions, the CEO is utterly against and would be utterly against people even with a history of this joining the org. Now, some of these things are from years ago. Some are from 2020 during this person's, Nicole LaPointe's tenure, not while these people were in EG necessarily, but there was no due diligence done. They didn't go out and check all this stuff. This stuff is all out there. Got it all. Now, here's the thing though. One, I didn't want to drop this during the major because I didn't want that person to potentially face Brazilian fans and a whole media and people turning together while they're still in the country. I don't want to do that to someone like that. But I'll tell you what, I won't be helping evil geniuses out since they don't allow me to communicate with them. I won't reach out behind the scenes and tell them, you know, what's going on with this play, you might sort it out. I don't have to because they don't understand quid pro quo. So what I'm doing is this. I'm going to put a sword of Damocles over them right now. And what I'm going to do is when this video comes out, I've already given that information to a top journalist in esports, but I've told them you have to embargo it until 9 p.m. CET tonight. So until then, evil geniuses, whoever from the org's listening right now and has just been told, you better start waking people up. You better start making phone calls. Your hair is on fire. The sky is falling and the sword of Damocles will drop. So I would go quick and try and find it. And you know what? If you knew the industry, you could have gotten ahead of this one, but you don't. You don't know the industry, do you? And so I'll use a quote again. Remember, we can't have staff or players that contradict in their history those types of initiatives. Here's a quote. LaPointe Jameson told the Post that Evil Geniuses wants the culture of a player to reflect the culture of the company that they just formed in the past year. Everything, even the logo shape, a circle, is supposed to represent the company's core value of inclusivity. Now remember, EG, when this all comes out and when the backlash to this video happens, all for the sake of a single interview request with one of the best talk show hosts and interviews in the history of esports, this all had to happen. You pushed me, so I pulled on the thread, and you know what? The whole motherfucking cardigan unraveled. I work hard to make sure I get mine, but no one can do it all on their own, and that's why everyone needs a support group. And so I have my Patreon community. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask a question in one of these monthly AMAs. Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming guests are? Or maybe you want to take part in one of those long discussions where you can help set the table of the topics and join in with other like-minded people. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Illuminati today via the Patreon link below, as the following people who I very much appreciate did. Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Kyle, Bot Pounder 420, Torin, Animosity, Tobias Bernasconi, Jensen Goh, Tosh, and always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion.